All right. In the interest of time, we're going to get started. This is the marijuana policy and the legalization and the impact it's going to have on employers. My name is James Deshane. I am with Armitage Deshane and Associates. I'm a contract lobbyist representing the State Chamber of Commerce. With us, we have John Gooden from M. Davis and Bill Paulin from Keeney Company. You'll hear from them in a few minutes. I wanted to take a minute just to give a brief overview of the legislation if folks aren't intimately familiar with it. It's House Bill 150. It's about the third iteration in at least my time representing the chamber of a legalization bill related to marijuana. It was introduced this year by Representative Ed Ozinski. It's a long bill. It's about 19 pages. There's a lot in it. But today we're going to focus primarily on the impact to employers. And when you're reading the bill, if you get to about line 205 or so, that is where the employer portion of the bill is talked about, or at least referenced to. The chamber, in past and continues to be in opposition to the legislation, predominantly because of the impact to the business community. We think that it has a negative impact for employers to have access to talented employees who can test negative on a drug test. We think it has a negative impact on the employer's ability to have a zero tolerance policy that would preclude an employee from using marijuana both at work but also in off hours. And then we also have concerns about related to liability. So what happens if an employee causes an accident at work, causes an accident on a job site where the employer might be a subcontractor and is under the influence or perceived to be under the influence, and what happens then? There are a couple other issues as well. The way the bill is drafted, it talks about having drug policies that are able to govern employees' actions at work, but it's a little vague on whether or not you can have a true zero tolerance policy. And there are also concerns about impairment. As you may know, marijuana doesn't really test the way that alcohol does. So there's no level of impairment that an employer or anybody else can test for. There's no 0.08. And, we've heard in other events that the chamber has held that, with the potency of marijuana that's so vastly different than, my parents' generation or older, that the potency is such that, you could be testing positive for marijuana in your system for up to 30 days after having, used. And that's a real problem for employers who are trying to navigate, a balancing between, having their own policies, having their workforce that they can, depend and trust to get the job done, but also not to, have incidents at work happen because now this product is legal, potentially if the bill passes. And so I think people are going to think potentially, hey, this is legal, I can do this wherever and whenever I want. And employers are going to be sort of caught in the middle saying, no, not here. And so, in terms of how this is going to work, I'm going to turn it over to John and to Bill. I'm going to ask them a couple of questions. There is a chat function or a Q&A function here. We only have 25 minutes left already. And so you feel free to ask a question. If you have one, we will do our best to answer it here. And if we don't get to it, somebody will follow up with you to make sure that you get an answer. I'm going to start with John Gooden, president of M. Davis. It's a construction manufacturing company with locations in Newark and in Wilmington. One of the things we've talked about in the past is the access to talent. I know we talked, just a day or two ago about the problems you're already having attracting talent to your company. Give me a little bit about, sort of what you're looking for, a little bit about even what you pay, just talked about that, and some of the problems you would see if recreational marijuana was to become legal.
Great. Thanks, James. Yeah, no, the talent issue has been on the table now for a long time. Even with the unemployment numbers we're seeing now, you can't find, and I'm not even talking about skilled talent, just entry level talent. The drug testing is a piece of it. We have a number, it's 1 in 5, 2 in 5 people coming in who are going to get interviewed and know they're going to take a drug test, still fail on a regular basis, even knowing they're coming in to take the test. It really is just amazing that it's out there. And we've got some concerns about what that's going to do, assuming recreational marijuana passes. What does that do to those numbers? We're already working on a diminished talent pool. Does it get smaller with this piece? And we believe it will. And part of that, it's not hard data, but our company, myself, we spend a lot of time in the vocational and comprehensive high schools working with the students to kind of educate them about manufacturing, about the trades. We bring them through our facilities for tours, and then we do a Q&A with them while you feed them. Anytime you work with high school kids, the only way you can keep their attention is to feed them. So you feed them and then engage them in questions. And most of them, I would say that certainly a simple majority, believe that once recreational weed is legalized, that they'll be able to smoke on their own time and it won't have any impact on their employability. And arguing with an 11th or 12th grader in high school is not going to get you very far. But I think we're missing on an education piece there, because we're going to stay zero tolerance. The places we work, the customers we work for, whether it's state or federal government and pharmaceutical manufacturing, they're still going to require us to maintain that zero tolerance. So I'm not going to be able to change that. And I really think that this next generation of talent that's coming into the workplace believes that, Saturday night eating a gummy bear is going to be fine, and it's not going to affect the job interview on the following Monday. And that's really concerning from my seat.
Thanks for that. And so, Bill, I mean, at Keeney Company, you're using, or your company is using, your employees are using, chemicals that have to be mixed in a pretty specific, format to not have a 5-mile evacuation take place in and around Delaware City. I mean, similar question to you, access to talent. I mean, how do you think, the impact will be on your ability to attract and retain employees in your sector?
Yeah, similar to John. I mean, we really struggle here. We're not as large as John is, where he has the apprenticeship program. I mean, we're hiring those skilled laborers with all the experience needed. And having this bill and having people believe that they're allowed to smoke or chew, whatever it is, a gummy bear over a weekend, it just doesn't fly for us. I mean, we have to take a zero tolerance. We do have DOT, so that precludes all of our drivers, which is easy, even though there's roughly 60,000 vacancies right now in the trucking industry. But we've been looking for an I&E person for 8 years and still can't find them. We've had to contract that out over that period of time. So we have let our employees know that we're zero tolerance. We let them know that nothing's changing with the way we're going to continue to operate. And as you said, when we do what we do, if somebody makes a mistake, it could be a fatal mistake. So we have to take that zero tolerance, or else people in our community, our team members, could all lose their lives. So we've taken a pretty hard stance with it.
Right, and that leads me into the the ability to have your own drug policy that conforms to what your company needs, right? There might be some people listening here who say, well, my company's not as safety sensitive is the term they're using now, safety sensitive as a chemical company or a manufacturing company. I may be something that is just office work or computer work, or there's no high risk piece of the occupation that either me or my employees are going to face. Why does this impact me? And I would say, both to John and to Bill, feel free, to either one of you who wants to grab it. But this, the policy is going to be, both for your active staff who are out in the job site doing the work and the high risk stuff, but it's also important for your your back end people in the office, either supervisory staff or admin staff, to conform to the same policies. it's just as important, at least from my perspective, but it'd be nice to know if you share that belief or perspective.
I can start. Yes, we do. Our clerical staff, our admin staff is still held to the same standard that everybody else is. And the reason we do that is we have people that have to bill out to our customers. If they make a mistake, it could cause a problem with customer relations. If they're getting the wrong invoice and they see that their price is different than another price, they might feel that we're taking advantage of them, or conversely, it might breach a contractual agreement. So we have to take the stance on our admin, because they could make just as many mistakes that could affect the economics of the company. So we've taken it, and we're going to continue to have it. Even during COVID, we still did random testing. And we actually have 3 locations. We have one in Connecticut and in Jersey. So we've been living with this for a while in Jersey. When we acquired our Connecticut operations back in 2019, we actually had to petition the state to allow us to do random testing. I mean, it was mind-boggling to us, but we did have to do it. And ultimately, they did give us the ability to randomly test our employees, and all of the employees are very accepting of that as well, because they realize that if they're clean and their team member is clean, then therefore the mistakes hopefully will be mitigated.
Good. And you actually, John, you want to add to that, but one of the questions we just had was, what's been the experience in other states where recreational use is legal, and how have you been impacted? Well, you just, Bill, answered part of that with Connecticut, but I would imagine, at least in talking to folks in Colorado and Washington State, that if you're federally regulated, if you have federal regs, if you're a CDL, if you have, federal DOT contracts or other, regulated, agencies that look over you, you've been given more leeway in terms of having policies that protect the employer. But I still think that the access to talent issue it doesn't matter if you're in Delaware or Colorado or New Jersey. I think overall there's been an access to talent issue. But John, you work on this stuff on the sort of the national level. You have other associations you associate with, ABC and others. What do you hear from across the country from people who are in your line of work, in terms of the impact from legalization in those states?
There's a concern. It's out there. As we said before, the talent pool really was small before the recession, 9, 10, 11, and it never recovered from that. It's been a scramble since then. And I don't, does the legalization of marijuana make it better? It definitely doesn't help it get better. Does it eliminate all people from the workforce? No, it doesn't swing the pendulum that far either. But it's not helping a very small piece of pie right now. And I think that's the point, is you keep ticking away at things that will help us attract people to the trades, help us attract them to the manufacturing, to process work. And it's harder and harder to find that reality. Where are these people coming from? I look around my office now, and it's a concern. We're a 151 year old company, and a lot of the people that I work with have been here 30, 35, 40 years. I'm looking to train that next generation of people, and not being able to find them is concerning. Is there another 150 years on our horizon? And to Bill's point earlier, we're going to have one policy. We have one policy across the entire company now. We're not even going to think about trying to split it up. Well, you'll get randomly tested if you're working on this type of work, or if you've got a DOT license, or if you're running a crane. The reality of trying to make something like that work, I don't think is anywhere close to viable. So it'll still be, everybody that works in the office, IT, accounting, HR, all the way through. Our apprentices will still be subject to pre-hire and random.
Okay.
The one thing I'd like to say here is I agree with everything, and I understand the legislators going and looking at other states where legalization has occurred And their argument is always, well, there hasn't been any material upticks in chemical catastrophes or incidents. And I agree, that's a good thing. However, we can't take the risk. I mean, we as employers need to make sure that we're protecting our communities and protecting our talent. And until they come out with some real technology that we can test and know if they're impaired at the moment, we have to take the hard stance that you just can't be impaired. You can't do it. Now, if you want these jobs and they pay very well, you have a contract with the employer that says you're not going to do it. So.
Yeah, I agree with Bill on that one, James. Using lagging indicators when you're talking about environmental disasters or injuries is a really risky metric. I mean, let's wait till a bunch of people get hurt and then we'll decide that this was a bad idea and change it. I think that's a really dangerous path to go down.
I agree.
And that's really been one of the additional asks that the chamber and the business community have had in general, which is, look, there is no spot test. You're at best, you're guessing if somebody is impaired on the job. And if you make the wrong decision and discipline somebody for appearing to be impaired, you're running the risk of having a lawsuit from there. So what we've asked for is, and this will be in the talking points for those who are having meetings with legislators tomorrow, is, look, there is no spot test yet. We keep hearing about it being on the horizon. When the first bill was introduced here in Delaware by Haley and Keeley, a number of years ago, it was still on the horizon and it's not here yet. And so we've asked, look, there's got to be, some measure of immunity from liability contained within the legislation, that if an employee who ends up being impaired causes an accident or does something that causes damage or something materially negative on behalf of the company, the company shouldn't have to bear that particular responsibility for somebody that, knowing or unknowingly did something, that as an employer you're having to put up with, right? If you don't have a drug policy, or if you're not taking a zero tolerance piece, you still shouldn't have, bear the weight of a workers' comp claim or a lawsuit or something like that. To date, the sponsor has said he's not, willing to add that in, but we continue to push because we continue to say it's important. And if the state is going to make these drastic changes to workplace policy, or in terms of what's legal and what's not, employers should at least be able to protect themselves from that particular impact. And so I wanted to make mention of that specifically because, as you'll see in a few minutes, we have a video to play that will outline the three things the chamber is really focused on: the talent, the drug policy, and the liability. There is, for the panel, for the attendees, there's one more piece here that you should be made aware of. There is a proposed amendment to the legislation. If you are Bill or John, you may like it more than if you're not in a safety sensitive industry. It's based on language that came out of California that would, first off, create a protected class for those who fail a drug test, which already off the bat we're not going to be a fan of. But number two, if you are in a safety sensitive, federally regulated industry like construction or military contractor or another kind of manufacturing facility, you're allowed to discipline someone and not face a discrimination suit for someone who's failed a drug test. In addition, if you can show that there's some sort of monetary impact to having somebody impaired on the job, you can make that case if it should have come to court, that you wouldn't be facing a discrimination suit for disciplining or discharging somebody who failed a drug test. For us at the chamber, for every other industry that isn't construction or some other safety sensitive industry, I think that makes the bill materially worse because now you have an extra hurdle of having to show some form of monetary impact that having an employee impaired would cause the company, and then you can discipline them or then you can discharge them, versus just having a traditional employer-employee relationship that would govern better what you can and can't do with an employee who appears to be impaired. We have a few minutes left before we get to this video. I did want to make mention that in the app and on the website, there are a lot of materials related to this issue, including some of the recorded events we've had talking about marijuana in the workplace and legalization. We had one last week, and I know that recording is in there. There's also an opportunity for networking after this session is over. So once we're done, go back to the website and go into the networking piece of the website to talk to other people about networking. But I wanted to give John and Bill an opportunity for any sort of last minute, comments that maybe I missed something that they wanted to talk about. And just some final thoughts on what you can tell other employers who may be on the, as an attendee, what really to be focusing on when they're talking to their legislators.
I'll chime in. Like I said before, I think there's it's death by 1,000 cuts. This isn't something that puts any one company out of business, but it's been a struggle for a long time to pull people into the trades. And we've been working hard through, as you mentioned, a variety of different associations to explain to people, what a plumber does, what a welder does, what an electrician does, and the wages that are associated with that, the free apprenticeship program, all those pieces. And it's still an uphill battle. So for me, I'm trying to do everything I can to get that slice of the pie as big as possible. I mean, Bill mentioned 8 years looking for an I&E tech, and that's the reality. It really is a challenge out there. So any piece of legislation that makes it harder, I think I've got, from a self-preservation standpoint, have to be opposed to. But no, thanks for leading the effort, James. I appreciate being involved.
Yeah, I would just like to say that a lot of these bills place a lot of onus on the employers to do certain things. And unlike alcohol, weed or cannabis has no indicator. You can't smell it. A lot of times you can mask the visual effects of it. You're asking untrained people to all of a sudden have to be trained to observe these nuances in people's behaviors, and I think it's really unfair to do. In Jersey, they've appointed a special type of person, which is unbelievably difficult. So for this type of bill, it just doesn't make sense for our types of industries, and even for anybody. But hey, I'm on board. Once they come up with a test, I have no problem letting my employees indulge their desires after hours. But until we have that test, we have to have the zero tolerance just to protect our communities and our team members. And James, I would echo John's comments. Thank you so much. This is a very important topic, and we got to keep talking about it.
All right. Well, many thanks to you, Bill, and to you, John, for participating today. I'm going to queue up this video that will be available, one on YouTube, but it's also available to watch again in the app or on the website for today's event.